What's up, y'all? Family ain't family no more. Today I'll be bringing you part one of the Christina story. So, without no further ado, let's jump into it. So, Christopher Dawes, aka Fancy Chef, was adopted by my stepfather's parents, Douglas and Izola Knowles, both of which didn't have any children of their own. Right? He was adopted along with his two sisters, Mary and Dion, which I love very dearly. And RIP to my Aunt Mary, who I miss very much, right? So, we all lived in the same house at 144-39, 225th Street, and I don't know what they call it, Rosedale, Brookfield, off of the Conduit and 225th, right? So, growing up, Chris didn't want for nothing. We didn't want for nothing. You know, my grandfather had a cleaning company, and he used to clean banks, and me and Chris used to go with him and clean banks. And I remember like riding on the floor, buffers and all of that stuff like that with my grandfather. Like, my grandfather was a great guy, right? So in the house you had me, my sister Joy, Chris, Mary, Dion, my mother, stepfather Tony, and my grandparents. And me and Chris shared the room. So we grew up more like brothers than, nephew, and you know what I mean? Because he's 11 years older than me, right? Now, all his life, he was a sucker. I mean, from the beginning of time, ever since I could remember, he always acted like a sucker. But you gotta remember, I'm younger than him, so I didn't, I didn't know that he was autistic. It's not something that they're gonna tell me being, younger than him. So I never knew he was autistic until recently. I remember him getting chased home from high school and coming home, his lip split. You could open his lip up like this because his lip was all split up. Like, I was there every step of the way. In our early life, I was there. I lived with him, so I know him. Like, this is my uncle, and let me tell y'all that I have not been around this man. Last time I seen him in 1992. Then I seen him in 2002, and I seen him in 2024. That's the type of relationship that me and him have now. So don't think it's like, oh, this is my uncle. I see my uncle all the time, and we have a great relationship. It's nothing like that, right? Okay. Let me see. So, all right. In the midst of that, me and my my mom, my stepfather, my brother was born. That's when y'all see the pictures right there. A little while after my brother was born, we ended up moving to Los Angeles, California, staying out California for about 3-4 years, right? Because we moved back in like 88, 89, whenever my grandfather passed away. Right after my grandfather passed away, we moved back to California. And that's when, Fancy Chef started to transform. Now, my grandmother, Izola Knowles, which was really, her maiden name is Williams. Now, the Williams is a huge family out in New York. They're more like the show Greenleaf. Like, they have a big church out there in Brooklyn on Myrtle and Tompkins called, what is it called? Greater St. Stephen's United Church of God, right? The church been there for over 60 years. So I ain't gonna hold you. We was like church boys back in the day, like Sunday school, Bible study, like crazy. Like, I used to hate that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I used to really hate that shit. Like, my grandmom lived in the church. So after my grandfather died, my uncle started selling coke, right? And he would always, something was always going on with it. But tell you, I remember one time, my stepfather and his best friend, Uncle T, right? And I remember it was like 91 because Sonic the Hedgehog was out. look at the camera and all that time. I'm trying to get my bearings together with this shit right here, right? But I just mentioned Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, and when I mentioned Sonic the Hedgehog, to bring back my Uncle Michael, which was my Aunt Dion's husband. Michael Gross from 119th and Sufton. Mr., right? It was my favorite uncle. And that relationship with my Uncle Michael is like a relationship that he was jealous of, because my Uncle Michael was that nigga. Like, always kept a clean Lincoln or Cadillac. I mean, when he died, he had the LSC. He died in 96, right? But this nigga tried to tell me while he was with me just recently that he used to beat Uncle Michael up. And I'm like, come on, man, get the fuck out of here. Like, you was not beating up Uncle Michael. Like, come on, man. Like, you couldn't even fight niggas in the neighborhood. Like, you was scared of niggas from out Laurelton and Springfield. Like, you was definitely not fucking with niggas that was from the heart of Southside. Like, come on, like, stop lying. Like, who the fuck is you lying to? Like, you just start lying. But now, boom, back to 91 and why Sonic resonated in my brain when this situation that happened to him. So I had just got the Sega Genesis, not Sega, maybe, was it Sega? Was it Sega or Sega Genesis? Whichever one came out in 91. No, it was Sega. My Uncle Michael bought Sega for the house. Lakers versus the Bull. We had Sonic. We had all of that stuff because Uncle Michael always kept that shit, always kept video games, right? So he was always jealous of Uncle Michael because Uncle Michael was the fun uncle that be like, oh shit, Uncle Michael, Uncle Michael, Uncle Michael. Get money from Uncle Michael. Uncle Michael was very generous, you know what I mean? But anyway, back to this bitch ass nigga. So it's 91, and I remember my stepfather and his best friend, Uncle T, from Roosevelt, Long Island, Terrence, right? Them niggas was getting high back in the day. It is what it is. They was getting high, right? Chris was selling coke. So I remember Tony stealing this nigga Chris, boop, and just hitting him, boop. Every time he hit him, cracks would just fall out of his pocket. It was like, and that's why I got the Sonic joint, because every time he would hit this nigga, more cracks would just fall out of nowhere, and they was in Terrence was just picking this shit up. Every time it fall, he just pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. And I'm like, yo, this shit is wild, right? So boom, he always been a sucker. Like, he's not a fighter. He always been a sucker, but he always had a whole bunch of mouth. His mouth is crazy. Anybody that know him know he talk a bunch of shit, right? So, he's selling coke back then. And my uncle, he always was a fly guy. I can't take that from him. Always knew how to dress. That's the way I get my style from watching him, because like he would teach me things like, who's George Marciano? You know what I mean? George Marciano is the nigga that make Guess. This is why that resonates in my head. So back in the days, this is like 91, he gave me this fly ass outfit, man. I'll never forget this shit. It was orange and white, George Marciano t-shirt, brand new, and a pair of brand new orange and white Air Force Ones, right? They wasn't brand new. He wore them, but that nigga was, he like, I got that shit from him, like that vicious wear shit one time and don't wear it again type shit. He was one of them type boys. So boom. So he gave me a pair of fresh Air Force Ones. I'm like, yes, I can't wait to wear this shit, right? So my rule with them, I was a nigga, my rule was to sneak them in and out the house. Like with my Aunt Mary, I would sneak her boyfriends in the house. My Aunt Mary, she was a little fast, as everybody know my Aunt Mary. She was on Instagram. Her name was 7 babies, had 7 different baby daddies. I still love her to death, right? But my Aunt Mary, I would sneak the boys in for my Aunt Mary. And for him, I would have to sneak him in the house because, he was hustling. My grandma would close the door at a certain time. He ain't had no key. Couldn't have no key. That was the thing. Couldn't have no key, right? So I would have to sneak him in the house. And that was like my job. I had to like try to stay up, nigga, and it ain't no, this is like 92, so I didn't have no beeper, or, he couldn't call me or nothing like that. So I had to like try to stay up and listen for this nigga to open up the door, right? So this particular night, I think I fell asleep.